The coolest and most challenging part of filmmaking to me is interviews. I love the challenge when I get into a room and I have no idea what to expect. I don't know how the light will be, I don't know how the audio can be in there, and I have no idea where to place my cameras or my lights, but I need to figure it out. This video will help you if you don't have the most fancy gear but still want to make professional videos. When I first started doing interviews, I had no idea how to light my subject, where to place my subject. I didn't know anything about the audio, and everything was just kind of bad.
That's bad, that's bad, that's bad, that's bad.
As I was doing this, I kept getting better, luckily, but still I had some setbacks. For instance, when I tried to make it more cinematic by having some light sources from the back, and just look at this. Even worse, when I had my first job for the Norwegian biathlon team, I was doing this. I guess I don't need to tell you how bad this looks. Now I feel like I got it down and I'm not very nervous before every interview because I feel like I know how to do this and I know how to work around it. Still, sometimes it's hard when you get to a room where your client might think that this looks perfect, but for filming it's not. You have issues like windows and just space, because you need to have enough space to have your lights and your camera set up. In this video, I thought I would show you a cheap setup using my A7 IV. You could also use like an A7 III, doesn't really matter. You can get a professional look without spending all that much. I want to show you how this room can work as a great space for an interview. Right now it's kind of messy, so we need to do some work. It does not need to look perfect in any way, but we do want some colors in the background because this will be what we will see behind us. You want it to be clean in the background. The light we're using today is the Godox SL60, which is like 140 bucks on Amazon. Usually I would use a softbox, but just to show you that this thing that costs like 10 bucks, Godox umbrella, actually will do the trick. So this little adapter thing makes it very easy to use the umbrella with this light. So since the subject is going to be facing this way, the subject in this case being me, we need to have the light on this side. Then you need to figure out, where do you want your subject? How far away from the background do you want him or her? In this case, I chose, and I do believe that this is the best way of doing it, have quite a lot of distance between your subject and the background, because it will separate your subject more and you will get more of that depth. I also always find it best to use a bar stool for these kind of things. There's something about the posture of the person in frame, but also you get the person a bit higher, so it's just something that I really like. You also need to figure out how the subject will be sitting. Will he or she be looking to the left of the camera or to the right of the camera? So you always want the shadow side of your face to be facing the camera. And based on this, you will have to place your light on the side where the person is looking. So since we were going for a pretty cheap setup here, and it was dark in the background, we did need something to separate myself even more from the background, which is why I took just one of the normal lamps I had in the apartment, had it in the background, and you got this nice little vibe. Also had some plants in the background that you can barely see, but it just made it look more nice and warm. I was going back and forth a lot here, just trying and failing, and this is kind of what setting up an interview is. This is also why you need to take time to do this beforehand. So tell your client that you'll need at least an hour to set everything up, because you might need it. It might take you 15 minutes, but it could also take you an hour or more.
Not enough!
Yesterday when I was trying this out, I realized that I wanted to look the other way just because there was too much empty space on the side where I was sitting in frame. So by changing this, I also needed to change the placement of my light. These two cameras now show how important it is with the framing of the picture. So if you look at this camera that I've been filming with the whole time, you can tell that it's very, very different from the one we have here, which will make it a really nice and warm interview. Then I got the issue of the light reflecting in the window, and you don't really want this. A little bit of it, if you have enough blur in the background, can be okay, because you have to remember you are producing content for the average person, not the filmmaker. So to most people, it will not be very obvious that the reflection you see there is the light. Unless it's super obvious, then obviously you have to do something. We still got an issue with the reflection in our window, which is actually a bigger problem now than it was before. So let's see if we can solve that too. So I ended up not having a lot of that reflection in there, you could barely see it, but I thought it worked okay. Sometimes you also need to compromise because the room might not allow it, and you do want the light to be close enough to your subject for it not to be too harsh. You want that soft light, that's what you're getting when you have the light source close to you. Just to show you how cheap this setup can be, I'm just using a black bed sheet here that I'm gonna put somewhere here just to create more shadow on this side of my face. This is not a perfect looking interview, but it does work. You have to remember that to get these professional looking interviews, you can't just use your phone. It does not work like that. I'm not gonna be the one telling you that you can use whatever camera you want to get this professional look.
Don't do it!
I'm just telling you that you don't need the most expensive stuff. In an interview like this, there's one thing that I would not want to compromise on, and that is the audio.
Just don't do it!
Yesterday when recording this and talking while I was doing it, it doesn't sound perfect. But I did a test with the MKE 400 that was just placed on top of the A7 IV. I think that it actually works pretty well. If you're getting yourself a cheap camera and cheap lights, just make sure you get yourself a proper microphone. I know I'm repeating myself on this a lot, but it's just so important, because if you don't have a proper microphone, your video will come off as less professional.
Not enough!
I hope you found this helpful and that you learned something. I think interviews are super interesting, challenging, and the coolest part about filmmaking, to be honest. And remember, good audio is key.